This episode is brought to you by the Kronos Project. From custom camera enclosures to long-term capture systems to Dragon Frame ready gear, macro equipment, or even custom engineered robotics. Let's bring your projects to life. Visit thekronosproject.com to learn more. Believe it or not, this was shot with no special effects. There is no compositing, there is no green screen, and the output you see here is directly out of camera with only a slight bit of editing when it comes to color. I filmed it here in my smallest virtual production stage. It comprises of a 55-inch TV, some lighting, a grow light, a Kessler Cine drive mounted on a Kessler Cine slider with one of their second shooter pan axes to work as a rotational element. Everything is powered by a mid-level gaming PC running Unreal Engine and Dragon Frame. The subject of this is going to be some mushrooms growing out of a Curious George Jack-in-the-Box. I emptied the Jack-in-the-Box out and placed a mycelium block within it. Once this is in here and I have it ready, I should expect to be able to predict when the mushrooms are going to grow in order to shoot this. The stage for this is going to be 4 pieces of wood that I have bolted together to give an appearance of an old rustic table. By carving out some area between 2 of the slats, I'm able to stuff a mushroom block in there and use some wire and some screws in order to secure it in place. This way, the mushrooms will grow out of the spot that I'm expecting to see them. And then I have to build this up a little bit in order to fit it on the turntable. This is not the first time that I've done this technique, and it usually works fairly well. You just have to make sure that you provide all the right conditions. I've always been intrigued by abandoned places and things where nature has been reclaiming what man once had. The idea of growing mushrooms out of things is one that I always think is kind of fun. Mushrooms are particularly interesting to watch grow because they have such a smooth movement pattern compared to many plants. Similar to the floorboards, I take a spawn bag and I stuff it inside the toy. This will ensure the mushrooms grow from the right location, and the idea is to have them grow and open the lid of this while it happens. A layer of polyurethane is very helpful in creating the impression that it's in a wet area. I want the place to look wet and damp, and I want it to fit well with the mushrooms. The imperfect effort on this makes it look more weather-beaten and as if it's been sitting in a long time with nobody to care for it. With my studio being in Colorado, it's awfully dry, and it gets even drier in my studio. In order to make the mushrooms nice and happy so they'll grow and have a nice fruiting, I have to keep them nice and moist. For this, I use a mushroom monsoon humidifier from the Midwest Grow Kits. I use these systems quite often because they've proven to be very reliable and provide lots of humidity. The humidifier is controlled via DMX through Dragon Frame. The system also includes a long hose that makes it very easy to put it exactly where you need it to be. Of course, we're not going to want to have this fog in the scene, and that's why we use DMX to control it. This allows me to have the fog only on when I'm trying to keep the mushrooms nice and moist and turn it off before it takes the image. Using virtual production techniques, I use Dragon Frame in order to send camera position to Unreal Engine. This gives me the ability to manipulate the camera and create these backdrops so I don't have to do any compositing in order to do this, nor do I have to sit there and spend extensive time creating a large set. Once I'm happy with the location of the camera, I usually spend some time going through the settings and looking for different things that are going to cause some disruptions in the scene if I film, including wind and things like that will move the environment. Sometimes I'll leave on various lighting things, however, in order to create a sense of time that is passing that matches with the movement that we see from the subject. Now that I have the virtual world sorted out, it's time to work on the real world. I have my set there with a couple props that have been added in order to give it a certain kind of a look. While I often use my own home-built multi-axis Dragon Frame robots, I get quite a bit of work done with the Cine drive. Mounted on a Cine slider with a focus motor and an extra rotary element in the front, I'm able to rotate the scene and make it seem as if the camera can travel around the subject even though it's not moving and the subject is. I find this to be a very flexible setup with a lot of capability, and this is my preferred method of using a slider when doing virtual production. This is not necessarily the exact move that I'm going to use, but this is me just playing around with a little bit to see what's possible. After all, the mushrooms are not quite ready to go, and something may change between now and then, but I do like to get my head in the space and kind of see what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. Now that I'm happy with what the real world versus the virtual world are doing, it's time to start getting the mushroom blocks ready to fruit. For this, I want to check the focus and then go in and I will cut the bag with a razor blade and open it up. And normally I'll take a little bit of time to dig into it a little bit and kind of rough it up a little bit to encourage the mycelium to start to fruit in that spot. And now it's time to prepare the bottom block as well. I expect the bottom block is going to take a little bit longer to go just because of the amount of air and oxygen that it's able to receive. It's going to be a little bit less, plus it's not going to have quite the humidity. So I'm expecting this one will start to fruit probably about 2 or 3 days after the top one. As you can see, the mushroom block has started to fruit, and it's enough that I need to get on this really quick. It kind of surprised me with how far it grew just last night. DragonFrame offers a very robust DMX capability, and I find this very useful. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to get the exact color right between the television behind the set and the lighting on the scene. So being able to go through and tweak the different values of the different lights really makes it easier in order to set things in to make them look correct. Now that I have my basic move built in, it's time to go through bit by bit and just ensure that the focus is in the correct place and apply keyframes. Focus rings almost never move in a very linear fashion, so time and care is taken to make sure that it's in the right spot. Otherwise, especially when using macro lenses, you're going to be off if you're not careful. Next step is to go ahead and load the move and run a few passes to make sure that's going to do what I want. I also have to be careful to look for any reflections or anything like that in the background to make sure that it's not going to disrupt the scene. Shooting pretty wide aperture in order to make sure that the backdrop is properly blurred out also means sometimes it can be challenging to see exactly where the mushrooms are going to be or to anticipate how far they're going to grow out at any point. I generally expect that I'm going to have to make several corrections as I film this, but once I have everything locked into how I want it, it's time to go ahead and start the time lapse because these mushrooms are not going to stop growing. And once it's running, all you can really do is hope that everything goes right. However, there are some ways to recover problems if you run into it. For example, luckily it did not affect the main camera. I did have one of my overly rambunctious huskies come over and knock the tripod holding the Atlee 4K B-roll camera that I have filming the behind the scenes. Here's the full shoot without any editing. I'm very pleased with the way that this worked out. The focus did drift off just a little bit a couple times, but I was able to, for the most part, recover it quite nicely. I could possibly have changed the speed of time and reduced some of the flickering in the backdrop, but it is supposed to be a time lapse, so I do think that the effect is relatively good. And right on cue, the second bag of mushrooms began to fruit. We see a little bit of a time jump as I lost a few frames, but all in all, I'm very pleased with the way that this shoot went. This is a fun one that I've been wanting to do for a while.